Hello and welcome to the Beauty Chronicles. I'm Meredith Jones, a professor of gender studies who loves popular culture.
And I'm Carla, Meredith's trusty sidekick.
In these Beauty Chronicles, we discuss all sorts of fascinating and sometimes grotesque things to do with cosmetic surgery, media, popular culture, celebrity, and much more.
So, Wuthering Heights.
Right. Yes, so we have both seen it on Friday night.
Yeah.
And we haven't spoken to each other deliberately.
I haven't watched any other reviews.
I've read a few.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
Okay, so, and you did read the book, right? You read the book recently?
Well, I read half of the book because, as you know, I didn't really like it very much and found the characters quite horrible and was sort of a bit shocked at the amount of, it was just sadistic. Like there was just so much brutality between the characters, physical, emotional, and I realised that's probably why it didn't end up on our reading list in high school when we were doing English.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it was on my high school reading list and then it was on university reading lists for me, various subjects, about the canon, the English literature canon, but also subjects about the Gothic, even.
I didn't even find it that, it wasn't an enjoyable kind of read from a literary point of view. Like I found it really, okay, this is why I stopped halfway, because you get to the end of the Kathy Heathcliff story and then and that's halfway through the book. And then their children spring up and start doing the same thing. And I was just like, well, I'm going to read another fucking half of the same with the kids.
Spoiler, it doesn't have the same ending with the kids. And that's kind of crucial to the overall, kind of deep meaning, one of the deep meanings of this book. But I think you're quite right to label it as sadistic and all of the characters as sadistic. There's nobody.
But it's also literary from a literary point of view, the narrative device, like it's just annoying. Like it's like one dude who turns up to rent the big property, becomes curious about the Heathcliff character in the Wuthering Heights property, who's his landlord, and then finds out more via Nellie, the maid, who then becomes a narrator of the story. Yeah. And it's just kind of like you never actually... Nothing's ever narrated from the point of view of Heathcliff or Kathy.
Only via Nellie.
Yeah, it's only ever and so
I was thinking about that this morning as I was making notes for this and thinking, in some ways, I think Nellie's an incredibly interesting and probably under analysed character. In some ways, I think she's Bronte herself. In some ways, she's kind of the ego, if you think about this book in terms of, in psychoanalytic terms, you could say that the original Kathy and Heathcliff are id, they're all desire, they're all, I want it now. Nellie's the ego who's, pulling them into line, really. And then I guess they're kind of watered down or almost their adult selves, ironically, are the two children at the end, Hareton and little Kathy. And it's also crucial that Heathcliff's blood doesn't last, right? So the children at the end, neither of them is the offspring of Heathcliff. So Heathcliff always was a complete outsider. His son...
Hold on, wasn't his son... Oh, his son wasn't...
Yeah, so you didn't...
His own son. Yeah, right, so I didn't get to that
Heathcliff's son was his son with Isabella.
Yeah.
But that son dies. So little Kathy marries that son. But then that son dies.
Because he's so poorly and sickly and whiny and annoying, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he has to die because he's too whiny.
He's pretty annoying.
Oh yeah, totally,
It's hard to
totally,
stick with
totally.
these characters. Anyway, yeah. So he
It is
dies.
hard
Oh,
to
okay. And
think.
then someone else
Yeah,
comes
and
along.
then Hareton is the son of
Like
Hareton is the nephew.
of
Yeah,
Vinton.
yeah. So what we end up is
So she
having,
marries her own cousin, sort of.
yeah. So we have the two families joined at the end in a happy marriage at last, the
Hmm.
Earnshaws and the Lintons, but
Hmm.
with no Heathcliff blood,
Okay.
right? And this film really, this film, well, the film, many films, and we're going to talk about one of them, the
Mm.
latest. There've been more than 30 probably. The novel and the films are in many ways about that black, dark outsider
Mm.
coming in, wreaking havoc for the
Yeah.
nice landowning,
Because
rich white
actually,
people.
just for people who
And
haven't read the book and don't know anything about
mm,
it, the character
mm,
of Heathcliff is essentially like a street urchin from like, he's
yeah,
dark, his skin is dark, he's
yeah.
swarthy.
In the book, I'll read out a few. So in the book, and this is crucial and will lead us into an essential critique, an essential and very important criticism that's been made of the film, because of course Jacob Elordi is white. So
But all
Heathcliff
the has
is
any film kind of cast a
one.
different kind of
One film
right?
cast Heathcliff as black, one of probably over 30.
Yeah.
So here's some of the ways that the child is described. As we've said, there are multiple narrators. There's Lockwood, then there's Lockwood reporting on what Nellie has told him, and then there's Lockwood reporting his own experiences, and there's Nellie reporting her own experiences, but also reporting the experiences as others have told her. So sometimes you have this very complicated levels of description. But here is Lockwood early on describing the grown up adult Heathcliff after pretty much all of the narrative is ended. So Kathy's long dead. And Lockwood says that Heathcliff has black eyes. He is a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect, in dress and manners, a gentleman, an erect and handsome figure, and rather morose. So obviously, gypsy is a insulting term now, an unacceptable term, but probably, he means that he looked what we would now call Romany. But then there are other descriptions of Heathcliff. So here's Nellie describing Earnshaw, who's the father at the original patriarch in the book at Wuthering Heights. Nellie is describing Earnshaw bringing the child Heathcliff home. He's been found on the streets of Liverpool, and Earnshaw says to his wife, "See here, wife, I've never so beaten with anything in my life, but you must e'en take it as a gift of God, though it's as dark almost as if it came from the devil." Then Nellie says the child repeated over and over again some gibberish that nobody could understand. I was frightened, and Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling it out of doors. Later on, Mrs. Earnshaw refers to the child as a gypsy brat. Nellie says not a soul knew to whom it belonged. And then she described him as a patient, sullen child. No, sorry, a sullen, patient child, hardened perhaps to ill treatment. He would stand Hindley's blows without winking or shedding a tear. Hindley is Kathy's older brother, and crucially, I think in the book, the father is not violent towards Heathcliff. The
Yeah.
father loves Heathcliff. The father names Heathcliff. It's not Kathy who names him like she does in the film. The father names Heathcliff and names him after a dead son, and is very explicit that this is a new son. This is a child to be treated like any other child in the house. It's Hindley, the older brother, who brutalises Heathcliff, and that becomes really extreme once old Mr. Earnshaw dies. Once Earnshaw dies, Hindley tells Heathcliff, "You are not a member of the family, you're a servant. You can't live in the house anymore, you live in the barn now." And he brutalizes him really, really extremely. So in the book, that incredible Martin Clune's character, God, I thought he did a brilliant job. He's at least two characters conflated, and
Mm.
it's quite interesting to have, a good father and a bad father jammed into that one character. I actually found that quite compelling, and I thought he did a really great job. But yes, just to continue a little bit of
Can I just ask one other
yeah,
question? Do you
yeah,
recall the Wuthering Heights being as sort of squalid and decrepit and dilapidated in the book?
the house
Yeah, the
itself.
house itself.
The book spans at least 50 years. Yeah, the book begins 1757 and ends 1803. Now, in those 40 years, the house goes up and down, depending on who its master is. So when old Mr. Earnshaw is master, it's a perfectly good country home.
It's not like it's depicted in the film.
No, but when Hindley takes over after old Earnshaw dies, it gets worse and worse and worse, and he becomes extremely squalid. And so Emerald Fennell's just hilarious kind of depictions of the house, especially those enormous piles of empty
Bottles,
bottles,
yeah.
is not too different to the book.
Yeah.
It gets worse and worse and worse. After Heathcliff grows up, goes away for a while, comes back, he moves into that squalor with his abuser, Hindley.
Mm.
Cathy's already married to Edgar and living at Thrushcross Grange. And Heathcliff gradually and cleverly degrades Hindley through money, through gambling, and through fueling Hindley's gambling addiction and probably his alcohol addiction, and helping Hindley drink and gamble himself to death, but also gamble
Yes.
away the home. So Heathcliff then owns it. Once Hindley's dead and Heathcliff is the true master, again, the Heights gained some not exactly homely aspects, but he fixes all sorts of things, and it's not a pleasant place to be, and abuses still go on there, but it's not the completely degraded place of Hindley. So the
Mm.
house kind of goes up and down. So just a little bit more about, maybe I can talk a little bit more about Heathcliff in the book, the descriptions of him, and then we can talk about the actor and in this particular film. Mr. Linton, this is Edgar's father in the book, describes the child Heathcliff as a little Lascar or an American or Spanish castaway. So we really get lots of different sort of descriptions. He could be Spanish, he could be, Black American, maybe it's Native American,
What's
maybe,
Alaska?
I don't know, I can't remember. We must quickly
Look it
look it
up.
up. Um, it might be an Indian, but I'm not sure. But whatever way we look at it, Heathcliff is never white, right?
Hmm.
He's always other.
Oh, Alaska was a sailor or militia member from the Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, the Arab world, or Africa, employed on European ships.
There you go.
Derived
So,
from the Persian word lashkar, which means army.
yeah, interesting. And it is said later that I forget by whom, maybe by Nellie, when Heathcliff comes back, she describes him as being very upright in his bearing now, as if he'd been in the army. So, yeah, but we're never told where he's been. But he
Mm.
certainly comes back transformed. Before that, after Cathy and Heathcliff have been found in the grounds of Thrushcross Grange as children, she's fallen, broken her ankle. She's urged Heathcliff to run, run, run away, and she's then taken in by the Lintons and pampered by them. But she's coming back, and this I find one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the book because she's coming back transformed into a lady, and Edgar is worried sorry, Heathcliff is worried that she's going to compare him to Edgar. And Nellie says, "But Heathcliff, you are younger, and yet I'll be bound, you are taller and twice as broad across the shoulders. You could knock him down in a twinkling. Don't you feel that you could?" And Heathcliff says, "But Nellie, if I knocked him down 20 times, that wouldn't make him less handsome, or me more so. I wish I had light hair and fair skin and was dressed and behaved as well and had a chance of being as rich as he will be." This is a black kid really, really knowing his place. And I think Emily Bronte knew exactly what she was doing here. She makes Nellie say, "Tell me," Nellie cleans him up. By the way, soap was rare in the period this book is set in. Nellie cleans him up. Then she says, makes him look in the mirror and says, "Tell me whether you don't think yourself rather handsome. I'll tell you, I do. You're fit for a prince in disguise. Who knows but your father was Emperor of China and your mother an Indian queen." But then Nellie describes later on a visit from Edgar to visit Kathy at home, and she describes him arriving. Heathcliff leaving out one door, basically. Heathcliff leaves stage left. Edgar enters stage right. The contrast resembled what you see in exchanging a bleak, hilly coal country for a beautiful, fertile valley, and his voice and greeting were as opposite as his aspect. Edgar had a sweet, low manner of speaking and pronounced his words as you do. That's less scruff than we talk here, and softer. So she's speaking to Lockwood here. But that difference between Heathcliff and Edgar is another really, really important part of the book, and I think an important part of understanding the character Kathy that is left out of all films.
Yeah, it's interesting because I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know, like in the film, it kind of, in the book, the issue of money isn't, it's not an issue for Kathy. Like she's always going to have money because her father's okay. He hasn't, it's not why she chooses
Well, I
Edgar.
disagree. Well, no, in the end it's not, but I disagree. I'm not sure if you got to this part of the book. Did you get to the part of the book where Kathy says, and Heathcliff overhears, to marry Heathcliff would degrade me?
Yeah, I did get to that.
She's talking about money there, right? Because by that time she knows that her father is broke,
Okay.
right? And
Okay.
she knows that Heathcliff has no prospects. So it actually is important. Money is important for her. And she's been quite realistic. Of course, Heathcliff only hears part of that conversation. So then we get to Jacob Elordi, a white Australian. The Heathcliff that he represents is in the book about 19 years old. So Elordi's too old as well if we're going to talk about those sort of things. There's been a lot of kind of age bashing of Margot Robbie, or, a 35-year-old isn't allowed to play a teenager. That's the least of the hatreds that people have of this film.
Does it really kind of, there's so much divergence from the book anyway.
That's right.
And it's such a kind of, especially this, I haven't seen the other films, but most of them don't even go into the second part of the book, which is all about the children, the next
Yeah.
generation.
No, no, they're left out. They're
Yeah. And since this film really does take certain liberties,
mm,
it changes things and it's kind of set in this bizarre sort of pastiche of weird kind of references to different cultural, like it's sort of,
indeed.
it's a very disjointed kind of world that the
Did
story's set
you
in.
feel did you feel that the film, apart from having you'd read half the book beforehand, but I'm really interested to know if you felt the film kind of worked just as a film. Forget about,
Maybe if I
being
was
true to the book.
Gen fucking Z, like maybe, like kind of, but it
Mm.
was a bit, I mean, it was sort of like vibe filmmaking. Like it
TikTok
was,
filmmaking.
I would say vibe filmmaking.
What does that mean?
It's like vibe coding. Like it's all about a kind of feeling rather than the sorts of drama we're used to seeing. It's
There
just a
you go.
different language, right?
It's
And
really, really important that you've said that,
mm,
vibe filmmaking, because what Emerald Fennell has said is that in this film, she wanted to recreate the feelings that she had on reading the book as a 14-year-old girl. Now, I just have to contextualize. Maybe it's my fantasy of what sort of 14-year-old girl she was, right?
yeah,
But we know she was white. We know she was rich. I'm assuming she was at boarding school.
yeah,
Also assuming she had a 14-year-old girl's obsession with horses.
yeah.
There's a lot of BDSM in this film, and quite a lot of it is about horses. And she would not have been my best friend when we were 14. I would have fucking hated her. My 14-year-old self would have made a very different film about Wuthering Heights. But I think we have to read her class, her race, her privilege, and her position at that time. That's the vibe. That's the vibe. So as you say,
It's the vibe, but also with all these kind of pop culture references that were weird, like, well, maybe not weird. Maybe they just fit into what's the name of the house? The nice house?
Thrushcross Grange.
Like that was something way more opulent than it was in the book, in the movie.
Mm-mm.
Something out of Bridgerton. Like it had a Bridgerton kind of, like kind of this over pinky, but then on the inside of the house, there were all of these weird sort of modern art references that I didn't quite understand, like kind of hallways of red, like red, like gloss red walls that almost looked like they were Pyrex, like plastic with
Yeah.
then white plaster arms coming out of them,
Yeah, I
hands.
sort of felt like either Fennel or the art director had seen a whole lot of things they liked and just jammed
Yeah, it
them
was like
together.
Tumblr. It was like a kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
curated pastiche. And then
It
Wuthering
hadn't
Heights
gone
itself.
beyond the mood board.
Yeah, yeah. And Wuthering Heights itself was kind of had this weird Game of Thrones Winterfell vibe that was it was almost like a castle sort of, but not. And then it had all these sort of huge coal mountains behind it that
Yeah,
it was just sort of I guess we're used to watching a film and looking at its art direction as something that serves a story, and so there's symbolism in it and it means something. And here it kind of didn't seem to necessarily be doing that
I
in the
agree with
same
you.
way. It's just a different language. And
Yeah,
it's more like, oh, this is sort of cool. And it kind of, yeah, it represents how I was feeling as a 14-year-old. But that's how we have to read it. Like we don't necessarily read it as something that serves a particular, the story per se.
yeah, it didn't really, I knew absolutely that I wasn't going to see any sort of faithful adaptation of Wuthering Heights, and I didn't expect that, and I didn't want it. But I did hope for a coherent film, something as coherent as
A
Saltburn.
Saltburn, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't there. It was a mishmash. Thrushcross Grange could have made sense, I think, if the whole Doll's House stuff had been a bit more obvious, or the chocolate box stuff, because I thought it was like a chocolate box,
Yeah.
and that hilarious scene where Robbie comes out dressed in the cellophane-looking dress, on her wedding night, as if she's a chocolate ready for Linton to unwrap. The theatre I was in, people burst out laughing at that.
Yeah, there was a lot of giggling in our theatre when Isabella was
Yeah,
at like she'd married Heathcliff and she
yes.
and Nellie goes to Wuthering Heights and
Mm,
kind of
mm.
Nellie Isabella's there sort of tied up like a dog.
Yeah, she's wearing a dog collar and she's
Yeah, and she's
barking.
barking and
Yeah.
stuff, and there was quite a lot of mirth in the theatre when
But she's
that happened.
really loving it. Isabella's really loving
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That
I
is,
think it was just
yeah,
the sort of situation. It's people. It made people laugh. I don't
yeah.
know.
And people
I thought
laughed
it was a
in
bit
my theatre
ridiculous.
as well. Yeah. That was one of the so there's if we talk about Heathcliff having been whitewashed, we could also talk about the sadistic sexuality between Heathcliff and Isabella. has been, I don't know what you call it. Is it been like sex washed or consent washed or something? Because in the book,
Yeah.
that is a truly sadistic domestic violence situation
Yeah. Which
um,
Isabella
that she does
willfully
not choose.
escapes from.
She
She
is
has to escape from it.
exactly, and she has to hide for the rest of her life from him. So begins that relationship by hanging her dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
He hangs her
In the
dog
book. In the book.
in the
Yeah.
book,
It's
in the book.
awful.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting to me that Fennell is really drawn to all this BDSM stuff, all this sadism in the book, but only in a nice consensual way. And you couldn't have Jacob Elordi actually trying to kill a cute little puppy
Mm.
by hanging it and choking it.
No, no.
So she's not going to do that. This is a really washed out version. This is a consensual. You'll remember that the scene with Elordi and the person who plays Isabella, where he keeps saying, "Do you consent?" And he keeps telling her what's going to happen, and she keeps saying yes.
Mm.
And then at the end of the scene, when Nellie visits and is horrified to find Isabella wearing a dog leash, and then Heathcliff lets the chain drop, and Nellie says, "Do you want to come home?" And Isabella says, "I am home." This is completely consensual, fun BDSM play that Heathcliff and Isabella are both right into. And that to me is, it's just one of it's a kind of whitewashing of the
Of the
sadism of the book.
yeah. And the sort of domestic violence.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
does it matter?
Well, it doesn't matter, but everyone's talking about the differences between the film and the book. And one
Yeah.
of the things, one of the things I'm really happy about is that I think a lot of people are going to reread the book, and I'm going to reread it again myself. In fact, I was thinking this morning, I'm going to get Audible and I'm going to just start listening to Wuthering Heights. I'm going to find a really good narrator, just start listening to it because it is so multi-layered. There's so much there, and I want to go back to the book again and again. I can't imagine ever getting sick of it. I know people who've read it 20, 30 times.
So tell me why you so love it.
I love that there's always something new to discover, that there's so many narrators.
Oh, you like that.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
That part of the reader's job is to kind of sift between how much of this is the narrator's story and how
Mm.
much of this is kind of true, whatever that might be. Um, I think Bronte's making a really important point there about narrative, that everything is sifted through another's eyes. And in this book, we get it's sometimes sifted through three, even four layers
Mm.
of narration. I love that the characters are so deeply unlikable. I'm not
Why
really,
why do you think you like that?
because they're
Because if
unapologetic. The two main characters are
right.
broken children, and we get their stories told through two grown-ups, Nellie and Lockwood.
I wonder if that's the kind of a hook somewhat. Because there's lots of literature with horrible characters.
Yeah, there is.
I guess these are written, I mean, I guess it's a love story,
Mm. Well,
maybe.
whether it's a love story is one of the problems. There's love there, but it's never unadulterated love, except right at the end with the two young second, third generation people. This is the love of uncontained children, the Kathy Heathcliff story. And by the way, in the book, they never have sex. Honestly, that sort of montage of them
Of
having
their
sex,
affair.
in the carriage,
Oh God. Yeah.
in the barn, I don't know where the hell,
Yeah.
anyway. Carla, I think I'm getting old because I
Mm.
did nod off. I did nod off, and I think I missed a few crucial costume changes because I kind of woke up after there'd been about 8 sex scenes.
Yeah. What was funny, I watched like Heated Rivalry the week before. I
Oh,
don't you have you seen
I
that yet?
haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Which is very sexy. And you know, the desire and the lust and the longing and the emotional stuff is palpable. In this film, it was just kind of, it wasn't, you know,
There's, I couldn't feel any chemistry really between
yeah,
the two. More when they were children. The two child actors I thought did a great job.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to ask Fennell, and I don't know if any interviewers have, why she left out the coffin scene. Maybe it was because Heathcliff had to become old in order to do that. You may have not read the
Mm,
coffin scene. I don't think you got to it, so I want to just read a bit out to you. This is years after Kathy has died, and Edgar Linton has just died, and he's been buried next to Kathy. So here's what Heathcliff tells Nellie as he's been watching Edgar's grave being dug. This is many years after Kathy has died. I'll tell you what I did yesterday. I got the sexton who was digging Linton's grave to remove the earth off her coffin lid, and I opened it. I thought once I would have stayed there when I saw her face again. It is hers yet. He had hard work to stir me, but he said it would change if the air blew on it. And so I struck one side of the coffin loose and covered it up. Not Linton's side, damn him. And when I'm laid there, I bribed the sexton to slide mine out too. And then, by the time Linton gets to us, he'll not know which is which.
mm,
So basically, Heathcliff opened up Kathy's grave, had a good look at her, said she still looks great.
mm,
The sexton, so we didn't get, why didn't Fennell show us that? Then the sexton says, hey, if the air gets to her, she won't look so great anymore. So he covers it up, but breaks open the side of her coffin. That's not going to be Linton's side. It's going to be Heathcliff's side because
mm,
he's bought the grave on the other side. And
mm,
he's bribed the sexton in advance of his own death to break his coffin open on that side so that he and Kathy can happily rot together, meld together quicker than Linton can rot to get to Kathy. So
mm.
Heathcliff has won. It's full
I mean,
revenge. So why did she leave that out? Because the Saltburn director that I know would have
mm.
had that in.
Well, maybe she felt that she'd already put something too similar in Saltburn, where he goes and fucks the grave. Do you remember? Does he go
Would
and
everyone
fuck?
loved that? That was the best scene ever.
Yeah, I don't know, like at the end of the film, when, I mean, I guess she sort of replaces that with the scene with Heathcliff holding Kathy on her deathbed, and he lowers the shroud that's been put on her and
It's made
ending.
all beautiful, it's not gothic, it's not ugly. There's none of true kind of gothic, dirty, filthy, disgusting, rotting meaning there.
Yeah.
The number of girls who are going to mimic that dead Kathy makeup for the next Halloween, I'm sure there
I
are
also,
already there are
yeah,
already kits being sold of that Kathy dead makeup.
I thought the makeup on the women was really visible. Like it was too visible. It was kind of distracting.
I would have loved it for it to be more visible. Like I kept wanting more. Why, for example, did we have that chocolate box, glittery, shiny, high gloss mise en scène in Thrushcross Grange, but we had a kind of not very good makeup when Kathy was on the moors? I would have loved for her to be high gloss makeup. There was not a lot of continuity, I think,
Yeah.
in the art direction of the
Yeah.
film. There's one
And
thing I want to say that I haven't read. So I've read quite a lot of the criticism of Heathcliff having been whitewashed yet again in this film. And Mark Kermode made the, very true point that he's whitewashed in every film. So
yeah,
if you just see Fennell's film as a carry on of that,
continuation
then
of, yeah.
you
Then,
can't. you can't really say,
Yeah.
well, she's done something terrible.
Yeah, that's what I
She's done
agree.
what her culture accepts that she's going to do. And that's why it's a very unadventurous film. That's one of the reasons it's a very unadventurous film. But there was something, and I wonder what you think about this. The child in the film, the child Heathcliff, is whipped to a point of bleeding by the father. And then he goes to sleep bleeding with child Kathy next to him. And then when they wake up, they're both adults. And those bleeding marks on the child's back have become scars on the adult's back. Did it remind you of anything?
Um, well, because we're Australian, it reminded me of shows in the when we were kids about the colonial times of convicts being whipped.
Totally. And Aboriginal people
Yeah.
being whipped. I'm I'm scarred forever myself by a scene in the Australian show Rush, which was
Mm.
about the gold rush. It was a TV show with John Waters, where an Aboriginal man was severely belted with a belt to the point of bleeding.
There used to be a place in near Gosford that we went to on like school trips in primary school that was kind of like old
Was
Sydney. It
Sovereign
was
Hill
called Old Sydney Town.
old Sydney town? And because I
And
grew up in Melbourne and our equivalent was called Sovereign Hill.
right, but you would go
The
there and
theme parks.
there'd be kind of
Mm,
redcoats dressed up and
yep,
kind of, sort of colonial houses, whatever. But at different times of the day, there would be a convict whipping and
yep,
that would be reenacted.
exactly. Absolutely. So it's interesting that I hadn't thought about that Australian connection, but of course you and I both have that in our childhood memories. With that scene showing his scarred back, I thought of that trope in American films about slavery, and there's always a scene in them where a slave is whipped on their back to the point of openly bleeding, and then later on you might see them years later with these incredible scars on their backs. And there are photos and paintings, portraits of real slaves who really show those kind of keloid scars. That's what that reminded me of in the film. Uh, and I thought that was the kind of one weird, maybe unconscious nod on Emerald Fennell's part to the fact that Heathcliff in the book is black. I did look up some of the films that have that trope repeated. Emancipation, 12 Years a Slave, Roots, Django Unchained, Pompeii, and Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
And there's a fantastic piece written for Time magazine in 2022 by an author called Janelle Ross about this trope, and of why it is an enduring Hollywood trope of showing the slave being whipped to within an inch of his or her life on the back, and definitely to the point where it leaves scars. And what Janelle Ross argues is that this is white Hollywood saying, we're great. Because look, we don't do this. We don't oppress black people. Here's even some black people in the film, right? This is what used to be the case. This was the brutality that used to be the case back in the olden days, but we're not like that anymore. So let's all comfort ourselves that actually we don't oppress black people. We don't physically maim and torture them when we do, but it's a way to make the audience feel good about racism. It's an extreme version of bodily disregard, bodily hatred towards someone of a different race, but done in such a way that it makes the viewer feel good. So
Mm.
it's a really
But
complicated trope that Hollywood goes back and back and back to.
yeah, but it's
Somehow,
also, I mean, I don't know that it's just Hollywood. Yeah. I mean, but
not just Hollywood, of course,
wouldn't like white kids would have been whipped and got scars too back in the day, back in the 1700s. Like it's not something that only happened to,
True, but I
and that the fact that this character isn't black kind of
in the
doesn't
film,
perpetuate that Hollywood trope. Even
yeah,
though for us it's impossible to see someone whipped like that and with scars on their back and not think of, well, we think of convicts. Yeah.
mm,
But
mm,
in America, you would probably think of African
slave.
American slaves.
Well, I think of Australian Aboriginal people too,
Yeah.
because of that scene I saw in that show Rush.
Yeah.
Whether who knows what Fennell was doing there, but it just seemed to me so obvious a link between those films about slavery.
Yeah. I
It,
mean, you
it's
could argue that the Irish convicts were kind of as good as in their day,
well,
you know.
absolutely. I mean,
They were definitely other, even if
Irish were
he
not
wasn't
considered
black.
white.
Yeah.
Irish were
Yeah.
not considered white. So it's complicated, isn't it? There's kind of a lot here. There's nothing in this film, but then there's a lot to talk about.
What did you
Uh,
think of the music?
Loved the
Yeah.
music.
See, that's what I thought that was the most coherent thing in the film.
Yeah.
And actually, as we left, Hilda said, "Oh, Gen Z just seems to need a movie to listen to music these days,"
Well, I love that. I'd
which is
happily buy
fine.
the soundtrack and never watch the movie again.
Yeah, I mean, I did. It did also remind me. I went to see, in its sort of heyday as a series of movies. I went to see one of the Twilight movies,
Mm, mm.
and it was maybe this. I don't know which one. It was the third or the I don't know, but it was like watching a film clip. Like it was just like one song after another song after another song. Not a lot of story, not a lot of dialogue, a lot of kind of, intense people looking intense
And
and a lot of
as you
feeling.
say, it's about vibing, right? Oh, I love that you've said that because the scenes that stick with me in this movie are from this movie are the ones that really looked like music video stills from music video clips. You
Yeah.
know, the film it really reminded me of 50 Shades of Grey.
I didn't see that movie.
Yeah, I had to see it. That's my excuse. I had to see it because I was supervising a PhD student who was, and I also had to read all of the books, and I feel
Oh,
like there were
Jesus.
about six of them, but I think there were only three of them or four. I had to read all of the books, and then I had to see that first film. And I saw that film in a cinema full of middle-aged women, which I'd not been expecting. And
Mm.
it took quite a while for, oh, what's the dude? I can't even remember his name, but that
Um,
Irish actor.
yeah.
It took quite a while for him to get his top off, right? And the women in front of me were getting topless photos of this actor up on their phones and showing them to each other, saying, "When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen?" When he finally took his top off, there were cheers, in that time. And it was the same for me on Friday night when Elordi took his top off in the scene where they do have sex in the bedroom. Mostly their
Mhm.
sex didn't happen in the bedroom, but when he took his top off, there was the same sort of laughter and there's a real
Delight.
pleasure in objectifying a man as incredibly handsome as him. I
Mm.
liked him better with the beard, but
But do you think he's a bit tall?
I
I
think he
felt,
was. I think they made great use of his tallness because
I don't think it was,
he's a walking dildo. He
but
had to
oh,
be
okay.
tall.
You think that's why? Because
He's a
I just would have,
walking dildo with a
like,
pretty face. He was so phallic,
but he just had to bend over too much to kiss. Like, when you
but
just,
also he could lift her right up.
yeah,
You
okay.
know. And
Is this
14-year-old
the
girls are
weight
not tall. The
IAT?
men they're fantasizing about
Yeah,
are
okay.
taller than
Okay.
them,
Okay.
you know. But I think this film is also really of its time. I think, what you say about it being a kind of vibe film, absolutely, a music video, but also the merch is unbelievable. I don't know if you remember the ads for when you saw it, but the two ads that came on really quietly, beautifully filmed advertisements with their own narratives. One was for an Estee Lauder foundation that ironically comes in 40 different shades. So really for every single skin tone possible, but that's a really expensive makeup. And the other one was for Chanel jewellery. And it had this group of differently raced models all kind of mucking around in the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles and then going for a drive. All the jewelry that Robbie wears in the film is genuine vintage Chanel. There's
Well, didn't she wear one? She wore something to one of the openings. I think maybe the one in LA that was like this $8 million diamond that Elizabeth Taylor used to own.
yeah, I guess so. I guess it was Chanel. The dress that she wears with all the sort of people have described it as kind of being made of rope and stuff. It's
Mm,
actually clearly to me a nod to Victorian love and mourning jewelry,
hmm
which is made of hair, human hair. So Charlotte Bronte wore a bracelet that was most likely made of the hair, intertwined plaited hair of her sisters Anne and Emily, and then it has some garnets on it as well. I think that one of the pieces in the film or at one of the premieres was a replica of that. That's in the Harworth Museum now. But that dress is certainly a nod to plaited woven
mm,
hair. So when someone died, you'd keep some of their hair, you'd have it made into jewelry. And there's a crucial scene in the film as well. Sorry, in the book where Nellie finds that Heathcliff has visited Kathy's dead body while she's still not buried yet, and her locket has been torn open, ripped apart. Edgar's hair that was in that locket has been discarded, and Heathcliff has replaced it with a lock of his own hair. Nellie then gets Edgar's fair hair back and she weaves it together with Heathcliff's and
yeah.
puts it in the locket, and then Kathy dies with that locket. Heathcliff never knows, obviously. Nellie tells that to Lockwood. So it's another complexity of the book that I think almost all films miss out on, which is that Edgar Linton is not a bad person in the book. He's a good person. He's gentle, he's beautiful, he's loving. He is culture while Heathcliff is nature. He's the good boy. Heathcliff's the bad boy. And you know what? That actually is the fantasy. And it is a fantasy that Kathy has. Kathy, when she tells Nellie she basically tells Nellie, I'm going to have them both. I will stay married to Edgar, but I will have Heathcliff always in my life. There's
Mm,
kind of an implication that it will be sexual, but not necessarily. And Nellie calls her a wicked girl
mm.
for wanting both. But yeah, so that was a long roundabout way of talking about the jewelry made of hair.
Do you get creeped out by hair?
No, I did that whole book about hair
Oh, yeah, that's
with
right.
with Bockers, with Suzanne
Yeah.
Boccolati. But we are creeped out by hair. We love it where it's meant to be, which is on our heads.
hmm
But if it grows in the wrong place, it's the most disgusting thing ever. And if it is removed from the body, it's often disgusting. So if you find a hair in your food at a restaurant,
Oh,
you know,
shocking.
yeah,
Like, how do you feel about like hair of someone else on the floor of the communal beach or swimming pool showers?
I wouldn't want to touch it, but I don't have to run away. And Victorian hair jewelry, I do really love,
Mm,
but I am a little bit of a sicko for
okay.
gothic stuff. Yeah, I could go on forever, just a few other things. Oh, look, I just thought all I could think about in the film was it's Barbie and Frankenstein. Because of course these two actors of their most well-known recent roles. I thought we're bringing together Barbie and Frankenstein. I did think Frankenstein did a better job than Barbie. I think he's a really great actor, actually, and he's underestimated and only ever really cast as a walking dildo, but that has to change for him.
Did you see, it wasn't he in that Australian film or TV series, The Narrow Road to the Deep North?
Seen it, haven't
Oh,
seen
that
it. Is it good?
I haven't seen it. I've read the book. It's about prisoners of war on the Burma Railway.
Right.
It's Richard Flanagan wrote the book. It's a great novel.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, Barbie meets Frankenstein. That's quite funny because there was something about the makeup and the sort of the dresses and even the dollhouse reference. There was something about Margot Robbie that was hard to. I just didn't think she was Kathy.
I thought she was always Margot Robbie,
Yeah,
but I thought she was meant to be. She's there as the
yeah,
executive producer. She's there
yeah,
as a massive, massive superstar. She's
yeah.
there as a 35-year-old woman
Mm.
who's totally in control of what's going on. So I read her, I never thought of her as Kathy in the film. But, that doesn't matter. That was good. I was interested that Edgar and Nellie were the two actual non-white actors used, and both were somewhat unsavory. Nellie much more so than Edgar. And they're just not in the book, but
Mm.
where you'd want to go, why on earth Fennell did that. The film is a real weird mix of whitewashing and colorblind casting.
Yeah,
Like, how can it be both? But it was. Joseph was really interesting in the film. In the film, he's this horny teenager who has a bit of fun with a horse's bridle and a willing maid. In the book, he's an elderly, crazed religious fanatic.
yeah,
Like, that was just a major, major change. In the book, of course, they never have sex, and this was pretty much soft porn, this film, wasn't it? And
yeah.
that hanging scene, I
I was going to
don't
ask you about that.
understand why it was there. Not in the book, nowhere in the book. Why was it there? The nun, the comedy of it was all gratuitous. It was
Yeah,
all, let's just chuck in this scene and this bit of glossy fabric and that bit of see-through fabric. Maybe I just don't think the film was going to give us those answers. We can
yeah,
speculate, but I don't think we'll get an answer because it all just remains on the surface. And that's
yeah,
fine because the
yeah.
music was fantastic.
Well, the music held it together.
Yeah,
Good old Charlie, who
yeah.
herself is kind of probably more like Kathy than Margot Robbie will ever be.
Yes. Oh, imagine if Charlie XCS had been.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness, this could have been amazing.
yeah,
But no, it had to make money. I'm sure there'll be a Lily of the Valley perfume. Lily of the Valley Wuthering Heights perfume released as a result of this film because, Kathy says, smell me, I smell like Lily of the Valley. And
yeah.
Heathcliff says that's not Lily of the Valley. He obviously means the real flower, not this disgusting perfume. Oh, gee. Well, you know what? Frankenstein meets Barbie, they bonk. That's it.